What is going on, guys? Nameless X here, and thank you for tuning in today for today's video. We are talking about Resident Evil 8 Village, and basically this is a video where I'm going to be talking about, not just the gameplay overall, but its mechanics and its visual art style, and how far these Resident Evil games have come. Now, what I will say, with my first playthrough of this game, I really enjoyed it quite a bit. I will mention one thing here as a disclaimer. Not really a disclaimer, but just a little bit of knowledge in there as well. But this game plays a little bit more like Resident Evil 4 and less than Resident Evil 7. But even though Resident Evil 7 was a first-person survival horror, in terms of its more horror aspects than anything else, but overall it still had some gun gameplay within Resident Evil 7, and I'll probably maybe do a video on that one as well in due time, because this is the whole entire month of October, and I'm going to be talking about horror games in general for this month as much as I can or as much as possible. So anyways, today we are talking about Resident Evil 8 Village, excuse me. Can't talk today, my bad. So I think what I would have to say about Resident Evil 8 Village, I think it was a good step in the right direction, in my personal opinion. I did like the way how the story fitted the retro style in a sort of way as of what, the original games were, other than having it be a camera that was a widespread away from your character, but it's not what we see here in Resident Evil 8 Village or Resident Evil 7 per se, because, they wanted to make it more immersive in a sort of way to where it's a first-person mode, but you're still playing with guns, right? So I think that's a really good aspect of what Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 Village did in that kind of department. I think it really did it justice in terms of this maybe scary feeling towards it as well, but overall I think they did a really good job with Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 Village. Now, I do, however, really enjoyed the style of the gameplay within 7 and 8 as well, and I think 8 did a really good job by, being able to go find the Duke. You're able to upgrade your weapons and make them more powerful against your enemies, because there are enemies within the world of Resident Evil 8 Village that are, I wouldn't say really bullet sponge, really, but, there are enemies that are pretty overpowered, and you have to have a really good repertoire of weapons in your disposal in order to go up against these specific types of enemies. I think there were a few enemies that I was not able to overcome in the beginning of the game. But however, once you get your weapons fully upgraded, or as upgraded as much as possible, excuse me, you are able to do a much better surmountable of damage against the enemies as well. So I think that's a really good way of how they did that within Resident Evil 8 Village. So I think what I'm going to do here, instead of calling it Resident Evil 8 Village all the time, I'm just going to call it Village, because I feel like that, going with full name is not a total necessity. So I was trying to find words there, how I was able to not obtain that, but, be able to pertain into this video that I'm making here. So I think what really makes a Village more a step further from the right direction of what Resident Evil 7 did, like I previously mentioned, it has to do with that it plays more like Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 did have some of that jump scares, and I'm not saying that Village doesn't have that either. It does. But it's more appropriated towards the gunplay in Village, because I think it has that nostalgic vibe from Resident Evil 4, and I think that's what makes it even more cool. I loved Resident Evil 4. I played the crap out of it, and it was astonishing, but it was still a good survival shooter horror concept of game as it was. And it really shows and tells of how Village implements some of that nostalgic feeling from Resident Evil 4. I think that's really cool. What I will say about Village as well, I think I love the setting. The setting in Village is very interesting. I did, however, love the setting in Resident Evil 7, which was, I believe it was in Louisiana, I mean, you had that. It was a very intricate way of how that game introduced a certain type of setting within that game. I think it was very different from other Resident Evil games. Now, bear in mind, like I mentioned before, other Resident Evil games were that of, over the shoulder camera. Not like the very older school ones back in the PlayStation 1 days, to where it's like the camera is a little bit more widespread. It doesn't feel, well, you do kind of feel somewhat confined, but if you're playing a game like Village or Resident Evil 7, like I said, they implemented the FPS feel to it, like the first-person shooter aspect of it, and it kind of feels a little bit, maybe claustrophobic, I would say, but it's not as bad as it probably as what the original games did, with that widespread camera of what those original games did as well. So I think that's another difference between these games from the old school into the newer generation of the Resident Evil games that we have today. So I think that's what makes these games different, but they're still popular. So I was going a little bit off topic, but what I loved about the setting in Village, I think it really implemented, not just the implementation of it, I really like to feel how it felt like a little bit of an underworld type of thing, like with the underworld movies, the vampires versus Lycans, with some humans in the mix in there as well. I think it has that type of vibe to it. I really like that vibe to it as well, because I think it fits in that way of a certain type of retrospect to it, and that's what makes it even more vibe and unique to its own type of creation of this type of game as well. So I think that's what really makes Village so cool, none the least. Now, what I will say about the gunplay, before I discuss more about Resident Evil 8, it's not just of its backdrop and its gunplay and other gameplay mechanics, I think the gunplay in Resident Evil, or Village, makes it more even better than from what 7 did, is the fact, like I said, it feels like an RE4 game. It does, but in more of a retrospect of a first-person mode to it. But overall, it still has some really good jump scares. By all means, I would have to say I think I had some pretty good jump scares in me when I first played this game. I guess it was something that I wasn't really quite to expect. But I think it's one of those things to where it's like, I think Resident Evil 8 or Village does a good job in that type of area. I think it does a unique way of how you can do those type of having the jump scares and that type of thing. So I'm not sure exactly what I was trying to say there, but hopefully I was trying to get a good amount of context. Now, I think, but going back to the gunplay, like I said, I was veering just a little bit off topic there. I love the gunplay in Village because, not just because of how the samey it felt from RE4, but the way how you can just upgrade your weapons and vice versa and make them more powerful against your enemies, so that way you can be able to do maybe 1 or 2 shots against your enemies and that's it. You can get pretty overpowered in RE in Village as well, because what's really nice about, other than Resident Evil 7, I think what's really nice about Village per se, you can do it in 7 as well, is that they have like a New Game Plus mode, but they really don't tell you New Game Plus in the main menu of the game, but you can play this game multiple times as you see fit, and as much as you play this game in New Game Plus as so many times, you can definitely be very, very overpowered no matter what difficulty that you play this game on. And that's one thing I do know about that as well, and I think that's what makes Village a lot more replayability, I'm sure, but I don't know if a lot of people play this game a lot like I do. I mean, I played this game, I would say, probably maybe 3 or 4 times already. And there's a reason why I made this video yesterday. I basically had to, put some specific parts of the game so that way I can be able to buffer it all into one video, and that way I could be able to put my own commentary on it. So, hence the reason why I'm doing this. So, anyways, I think Resident Evil 8 Village I love its setting. I like the way how it just feels. It's dark, it's gritty, it's It's a little bit gothic though too, because you know it does have some of that gothic feel setting to it as well, and I think that's what makes Village very unique from 7. You know, it does have that feel. Other than the gothic feel to it, I do feel that I think it feels a little bit from what 4 did. You know, 4 did a really good job of that dark gothic feel as well. I mean, of course, all the Resident Evil games have done a great job of its dark gothic feel, and you know, the zombies and the werewolves or whatnot, or the dogs. I mean, you have all these different types of enemies within the REA game universe, and it's interesting of how far this series has come from 7 to 8. Village, right? And so I think that's what makes them even more cool and more atmospheric. And I think all the Resident Evil games have always been very atmospheric, you know, and it's not just about the atmosphere, really. It's all about the story as well. You know, the atmosphere sometimes tells a little bit of the story of each game as well, but it's more appropriate with the story of the games towards to what, you know, what you're going through or what you're going to be doing within that specific game. You know, it's the gunplay, it's the atmosphere, it's the sound, it's the sound of things, it's the music, and it's very interesting why these games are so popular. And that's another reason why I think these games are really popular as well, because they are popular. And so it's like, I wouldn't see a reason why the Resident Evil games have gone stagnant. I do believe one of the weakest games in the Resident Evil series is Resident Evil 6. You know, I did play through 4 and 5. I did play through 6 with a friend. And while I did enjoy 6 to a certain extent, it felt very more actiony and less scary. It didn't have a lot of scares to it at all, really, to be quite honest. But I think... hence the reason why I think that Capcom did a really good job with Resident Evil 7 of its horror theme, and, you know, having some shooting effects, you know, having some of that FPS to it. But overall, it's still... Resident Evil 7 did a good job of feeling at that, you know, of a game called Alien Isolation. It had a little bit of that cat and mouse feel to it. With Resident Evil 8 Village, I think it didn't really have that cat and mouse feel to it. It. Like I said, it's more on the lines of an RE4 clone, but in first-person mode. But overall, I still think that Resident Evil 8 Village just does so many things right in terms of its structure, you know, its gameplay. Basically, it's gunplay or gameplay, as it were, because of that specific reason. And I think that's why 8 or Village just does a lot of things right, in my personal opinion. I mean, by all means, if you have any comments or questions, put them in the comment section below and let me know what you think. That would be much more appreciated. But I think 8 or Village it's one of those games to where it's like, it makes you want to feel or think about what the future installments are going to be in terms of what 7 and 8 did. I think that's what's really more important as well, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen other than the expansion that is be coming out this year, the 27th of this month, which is the Winter's DLC, which is interesting. You play as Rose. You know, and I mentioned this in my stream the other day when I streamed Village as well, and I think we're really trying to determine how Rose's gameplay is going to be like with that DLC for Village, and I mean, it's going to be different, really, but it's still going to be in the overall setting where Village takes place, right? And I think it has to do with what the powers are going to be like for Rose, which is Ethan Winter's daughter and his wife's daughter as well. So
yes, Mother.
It's interesting. I'm really interested on the lines of how that DLC is going to be very much more implemented in terms of the story-wise. You know, she was born... not differently, but she was born with some type of power or some sort of abilities. And for what I understand with Rose's abilities, you're able to... I don't know what they are. I really can't say because the expansion's not out yet. I do plan on getting the expansion at some point, and I'll probably be making a video on that one as well. and hopefully to understand what that DLC is going to entail, what the story is going to entail, and how it's going to very much intertwine along with Village as well. You know, I don't know if it's going to intertwine very much in 7. I don't think so, because, I mean, you got to think about it this way, though, too. The DLC is basically going to be more taking place between, I think, Village's ending and then forthwith of how much further progression what that DLC will do while playing Rose. So that's going to be cool. Like I said, I'm really kind of curious what that's going to do. So, I will say I do like, I think another thing what I really loved about Village, other than it being a clone from what Resident Evil 4 does in terms of the gameplay and not just the horror aspect to it, it has to do with, you know, like I said before, the gunplay, or, you know, the atmosphere, and just how much it kind of somewhat feels a little nostalgic to it because of what 4 did. But overall, I just think that Village just implements a better job of the exploration. You know, I do love the exploration in Village. I think the exploration in Village is, it's not, I wouldn't say it's robust. I would say that it's much more, it's a little bit more intricate, to be quite honest, because, you know, you're going through different types of locales within Village, but the main hub of Village itself is going to be to where you first start off. That's the main hub of Village, and I think that that's where the focal point of the story for Village is. It's where it takes place. But once you venture off, like, towards the different types of locations, as you see here, you're in Lady Dimitrescu's castle, right? And you're basically, you have to go up against her, but before you go up against Lady Dimitrescu, you have to, like, go against her 3 sisters. And so that's what I want to talk about here today, though, too. I think Village just does a good job of its boss battles. You know, I do like the way how the boss battles worked. I would say one of my favorite boss battles in Village has to be, I think it was the water guy. I'm trying to remember what his name was, but point being, that felt like that the water scene or the water boss in Resident Evil 4. And that's what makes Village a little bit more nostalgic as well in terms of that. And I think that Village just, it really captivated that specific battle. It's really cool. I think that's one of the benchmarks from what Village did, in my opinion. So, just putting that out there. Unfortunately, you don't seem to have the there is one thing I do want to add as well. There is this one place within Village, which was actually quite scary. It was when you go up against, you really don't go up against it, really. It's more the lines that you basically interact with this huge baby, and it was the place of it was the puppet lady. I forgot what her name was. My apologies. But it was that, I think that was literally one of the best, cool, and somewhat scary places to visit because of that baby thing. It was like one of the most scariest things I've ever seen in a video game. I mean, I have good jump scares in other video games like Amnesia: The Dark Descent, or other horror games like Alien Isolation. That's a pretty good jump scare as well. But I think Village just does it much better because of that baby scene, or in that house, as it were. That was like I said, that was definitely one of the most creepiest things I've ever seen in a video game. So yeah, I literally jumped out of my seat, literally, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, crazy stuff. But we are getting close to the end of this video here, pretty soon here. So I want to talk more about Now, there is one thing I will add is you play as Chris Redfield towards the end of the game, and my thoughts on that were kind of a little bit mixed. And I was kind of wondering how that was really going to be implemented into the story, and it was implemented, but it was very. I thought it was weird, but it made sense. And so what happened is, at the beginning of the game, when you first start the game out, your wife is not actually your wife. It's another enemy within the game that kills Ethan, but everybody knows who Ethan is. He actually ends up being a metamycete part of that. It was Ethan was part of that metamycete, and so basically it's like some type of fungus or some type of sentient type of thing, and that's basically what happened to Ethan. He actually died in Resident Evil 7 by being stomped on from the baker, Father Baker, basically. And Ethan died from that, and so Ethan is not Ethan is Ethan, yes, but Ethan is part of that metamycete sentient thing, and so that's the reason why Ethan was able to not establish, but being able to put his hand back together. That's the reason why everybody was wondering what the fuck. But yeah, it was I thought that was interesting. And quite honestly, I will put this in here as well. I did not know that Ethan died in Resident Evil 7 because I did play it for the first time, and it's just like I just wanted to play it. I didn't really want to get much too invested into the story. But once I played it again, I'm just like, oh, okay. It made all more sense now. And that hence the reason why I tried to finally realize that, Ethan was not just Ethan, but he was part of that metamycete sentient thing. So he's part of that thing now, and so that's the reason why you play as Ethan still in the village. So yeah, it was very cool. I really think that Village just does. It's definitely my favorite in the series. I loved 7. I did like the horror themes of it and everything, but overall, I think Village just does. I'm not saying that Village isn't better than 7. I think 7 is a little bit better than Village because of the horror aspect to it. But overall, I still think that Village does a really good job in terms of just everything of what I previously mentioned in this whole entire video. Gunplay, its setting, its Victorian type of concept to it, and it just makes it really, really cool. Of why Resident Evil 8 did. And from what I understand, though, too, Resident Evil 8 did a really good job with its sales. I really can't say how much it sold, but overall, it was a number 1 seller for amongst a lot of Resident Evil fans, and I think a lot of Resident Evil fans loved Village as well. Like I said, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And like I said, it's definitely... I do like it a lot better than 7 in certain aspects, but when it comes to the horror element, I think 7 definitely trumps Village better in that place. So. But yeah. One thing I would mention here as well, I was trying to think about doing a comparison video between the PS4 version and the PS5 version of Resident Evil 8 Village, and I'm just like, I don't think that's really necessary because there are a lot of videos out there like that, and I think it was just not really, it wasn't really worth it. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because even though I didn't need to, I'm just trying to fill in the void here because this video is almost done, and so it's like I'm just literally just trying to put in a little bit more extra conversation before this video is finished. So, but anyways, this is Nameless X here. Thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. But if you had any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section below. I'd be more than happy to answer your replies. More power to you. But if you want to subscribe, hit that notification bell. Please leave a like if you like. more power to you. Thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And just enjoy the rest of this video as I will no longer talk. And so you can watch just the rest of this video for Resident Evil 8 Village. Take care, guys. All right. Peace.